Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So if you caught my last video, I did explain that I wouldn't be uploading some videos for a couple of weeks because I was moving house. So I have now moved, I have now set up my new craft space, which I'm really happy about. There will be a video just giving you a little walk around, a little bit of a tour of that room. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos or that particular craft room tour video. But I've got a couple of magazines that have come through that I need to catch up on. So today we're going to be looking at issue 215 of Simply Cards and Papercraft. So this issue came with the cherry blossom stamps and coordinating dies. So we're going to be using those in today's video to create a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding card. So as normal, we're just going to take a quick flick through the magazine because this has been out for a little while. I don't want to spend too much time going through the magazine because I'm sure a lot of you have already looked at it. Looking at next month, we get a 45-piece stamp and die set. So this is little birdies, and I think this is really cute actually. I'm really excited for this one. You've got different stamps and dies that is going to build up a couple of different birds, and I think that's going to be really fun. But for now, let's get into creating the card for today's video. So the one thing I just want to mention quickly before we really get into making the card is you'll have to excuse my lighting. It looks like I've got a filter on this video, and the reason for that is because the bulbs that I've picked up, I've got a couple of new desk lamps that I'm going to be using instead of my big proper studio lights that I had in my old craft room. I just didn't check, and the bulbs that I picked up are actually a warm white. So everything was kind of yellow. It was reflecting off the wood of my desk. So again, it will look a little funny. It'll look like I've got a little bit of a filter on, but I was just trying to not have it be so yellow, so have it a little bit more white. So like I said, it's going to be a little bit dodgy, but I do need to go and pick up some new light bulbs before I make my next video. So looking at what we have done already, so I picked out an embossing folder. This is a Sizzix. I'm not sure what the name is. It's one that's been hanging around for a little while, and I've just run that through my Gemini die cut machine to create our background. So I wanted to have something that's going to be a little bit more interesting but doesn't pull focus from the cherry blossoms. So I just embossed that onto some regular white cardstock. So it's going to be a white on white background with the card, and it's going to look really pretty. And now what I'm doing is I've pulled out my stamping platform just so I could stamp these cherry blossoms multiple times. So we're going to have one of the large branch, and then the other 3 dies I'm going to cut a couple of times because I want a couple of extra stamped images. But I'm also going to do a little bit of decoupage, and I'm going to just layer these up a little bit. So now I've zoomed in so we can take a look at the colouring. I'm not doing anything too difficult here. This is going to be really basic colouring in. So I did decide to colour the stem in green and turn it into a stem, but you could maybe colour it in brown and have it more of a twig. So it just depends what kind of style you want to go for. But like I said, I wanted to just add a little bit of green in here because I thought that would go really nicely with the coral colour that I chose to colour in these cherry blossoms. So the colours from the Copic sketch range that I'm using is YG07 and YG09. So really basic, not trying to do anything sort of too difficult with that because it is quite a small area. So then for the flowers themselves, I'm going for the coral colour. So we've got the coral blend and coral shades from the Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend Alcohol Markers range. So I'm not starting with the lightest colour here, I'm starting with the medium, and I want to take it down a step so then I get a darker shade in here rather than it being just so light. So with the coral shades, I'm going to take the lightest of that pen and I'm going to colour in the centres. So I didn't want to worry too much about having really accurate shadows and highlights here. I wanted to go for something a little bit different just to have it sort of stand out a little bit more. So you can see that I'm just using this darker shade right in the centres. In my head, I'm thinking a little bit more like how pansies are, and it has that purple colour right in the centre. That's kind of more of the look that I was going for. But I did then just blend this out. I went back to the coral blend and used the darkest colour there, and again then went back over that with that medium shade. So as I said, nothing too difficult here at all, really basic, but really you can do these however you want to do them. Even though these are cherry blossoms, you probably could colour these in lots of different colours. Again, you could do it maybe in different styles to make them maybe look like different kinds of flowers. flowers. But I'm really happy with how these stamped as well. I did use my stamping platform, but certainly for the sentiment I used an acrylic block, and I thought it actually worked really, really well. So they have stamped perfectly. You don't need to have a stamping platform. So to cut these out, I'm going to use the coordinating dies with the extra little flowers. Because I did stamp an extra image, I am going to run these through my die cutter machine a second time, but I'm just holding these in place with some washi tape. So you can see that they've all die cut really perfectly, and it's given you that really nice thin white border around the stamped image. This one here didn't die cut quite perfectly. I don't know if I didn't line it up properly, maybe I didn't put enough washi tape down, but it just moved just very slightly. But I'm okay with that because I actually stamped this additional flower because I wanted just the small one. So what like I said, was going to do a little bit of decoupage. I'm just going to kind of build them up because this stamped image with the two flowers together is exactly the same as what is on that bigger stem of cherry blossom. So all I'm going to do is pop some foam pads onto the back of it, and then I'll be able to layer this up 3 times. And I think that's just going to add a really great additional element to it, so you can either use them just for extra flowers on your card, or you can then build them up. So what I wanted to do was create a little bit of a frame just to frame these cherry blossoms. So I've taken, this is the Spellbinders Nestabilities Label 17. So this belonged to my Nan. I don't tend to use things like this, but I thought actually it would work really nicely. So I took 2 of these nesting shapes and I'm going to create a frame. So I've taken 2 that are next to each other in size. I've lined them up as best that I could, and I've just taped this down. I'm going to run it through the die cutter machine, and you'll be able to see here that I actually have a center, which I could use as a label or as a backing piece, and then I have the actual frame itself. And I've just used some gold mirror card. I thought this would work really nicely with that coral colour. And again, like I said, it's just going to give us a nice thin border just to frame that cherry blossom. So I'm only going to use the frame on the card, but I'm going to keep that almost tag backing piece for a different project. So I've got my card base here. Like I said, this is a 5.5 by 4.25 inch top folding card. And then I've just trimmed down, not by much, because the Sizzix embossing folder was roughly the same size. I just chopped it down just a little bit to give us a little border. And I'm going to pop some, this is the Big Mama Foam Tape by Simon Says Stamp. This is a really great thin double-sided foam tape. I really, really love how thin it is because it adds dimension, but not too much dimension. And then it means that I can add more foam squares to my flowers, and that is going to show more of the dimension and not make it too bulky. But you can see just how beautiful that background is. I absolutely love this embossing folder. So to attach our cherry blossom stem, I'm going to use some of the Premier Craft glue. So this is just like a wet sort of PVA glue, if you like. This is by Hunky Dory. So this is a really great glue. And I'm just going to pop a little bit down on each of the cherry blossoms where it's a little bit thicker, just so I don't get any that's going to squirt out from behind this image. And this is then going to go roughly in the center, and we're going to be able to put our frame around it. So I'm going to use that frame just as a guide as to where I want it to go. And I thought then, actually watching this back, that even just to have it like this, without the frame, if you just had that one stem with a sentiment, I thought that would look really great as well. It's a little bit more basic, but it's still really beautiful. And I love using embossing folders with just white cardstock for a background, because it doesn't take too much away, but it adds something really subtle to the background. So now I've got that glued down, I'm just going to use an acrylic block just to help that bond and keep it in place and make sure then it doesn't curl in any areas. And I'm going to again take some thinner foam squares, and I'm going to pop this onto the back of the double flower image. And this is then going to start building up our stem and our cherry blossoms. So you could cut and colour tons of these cherry blossoms and make a really beautiful kind of full card, a full bouquet, whatever it is. There's some really great examples in the magazine as well. But actually I really love keeping it just a little bit more simple and having these stamped images be the same, being able then to layer them up, I think just gives it an extra element where you can kind of go up rather than just having to have more. So you can see that on this smaller flower they cut from the double image. Again, I put another foam square on the back of that, and I just layered it up again. And when I hold the card up, you will be able to see that layer. So none of the other flowers I don't think actually lay on top of each other. I thought these sideways flowers actually did, but they don't. But that's okay, because we're just going to use it to fill in some of the other gaps around the card. I really love how this is starting to come together. And again, like I said, I think it's beautiful even just like this without that frame. Pop a sentiment on and I think this is going to be perfect. So I'm just pulling out some tweezers just so I can get my fingers out of the way and really see where I want to pop these flowers down to. And I'm bringing back in that frame again just as a reference to see where I want to put them. I decided to have this one just overlapping slightly from the frame just to give it a slightly different look. So to add some dimension to the frame itself, I'm using some really thin foam tape. I've taken both of the sort of release papers off these, and it means then that you're able to kind of wiggle it around this frame. So if you're trying to make maybe a shaker card or you're going around a circle, the best thing to do is to take then that top paper off it as well, and that will just give you much more flexibility with it. So you can see I'm just going all the way around this frame, and that is again just going to add a little bit of dimension and just something to make it a little bit more interesting, to really pull focus into these flowers. So once I've got that foam tape on, I can go ahead then and just pop my frame into place. So I ended up taking that flower off again, just so I could really get it into place and hide that bottom stem as well. So I do end up just tucking it very slightly under that bottom flower, and then I will go ahead and just pop my flower that I took off just back on again. So again, I really love how this is coming together. Like I said, it just frames those flowers really, really beautifully. And if maybe you've got a stamped image of a vase maybe, or you know, a plant pot or something that these could go into, again, you could create them as if they're growing, and I think that would look really great as well. So a really great versatile stamp set here with this magazine. So all I'm going to do now is just finish popping in the rest of these flowers. I'm going to kind of position them in and around this stem. I don't want to cover the stem kind of too much, but it's always a good idea just to test it in different places and just see where it looks best. So I'm going to pop it just under that bigger flower, and then you've got those buds sort of coming out from the top of it. So it really just kind of fills in that area nicely. So you can see then, if I actually hold this up, you can see all of that dimension from the foam pads, and you again can see that embossed background, and I think it just works so well together. So the next thing I'm going to do was something that I spotted in the magazine. In a couple of the examples is someone had taken a white gel pen and just added some detail into the centre of the flowers. So on the stamped image themselves, they actually have the stamens, the middle sections sort of coming out, and then they've got a little bit of a circle. So what I decided to do was take that white gel pen, so this is a jelly roll pen, and I just went over all of those dots, and I think it just adds something really beautiful to these images and just makes it look a little bit different. So for the sentiment, I wanted something that did sort of go with this card, and I didn't have any kind of coral cardstock, so I decided just to take a piece of white card, and then I used that Tri-Blend Coral Shades pen and just created a gradient on here with this alcohol marker. So you can see I'm starting with the lightest at the top, and like I said, just blending that out. And this is then going to match in nicely. So it is obviously darker than what we have actually coloured in our cherry blossoms. But again, I didn't want it to be sort of too matchy. I thought it was nice just to have something a little bit darker. So I'm stamping the sentiment with an acrylic block. So I do just do a test stamp to see how well it stamps with an acrylic block, or whether I need to pull out my stamping platform to be able to stamp it a second time. But it worked perfectly, so I went ahead and stamped that on top of the alcohol ink. I did leave that to dry just to make sure that it didn't kind of bleed or anything, but I used the Versafine Onyx Black ink for that sentiment. And then I pulled out this banner die. This is from the Hunky Dory Be Happy Sentiments die set. So you've got this banner which fits some of the smaller words on it, but it's got a really lovely bit of pierced detail on the die itself, so it just adds a little bit of extra detail. So once this is dry, I did leave this to one side just to let that ink dry. I didn't want to smudge it when it was going through the die cutter machine. But then I just ran that through the Gemini, add a little bit of purple tape on here just to hold that in place, and then I can go ahead and trim this down with the guillotine. But you'll be able to hopefully see just a little bit of detail, that little bit of pierced detail on there. So it's only on the top and the bottom, so if you were to cut the sides down, it's not going to take away any of that pierced detail, because it's not actually on the sides of that die. So once I've trimmed down then this sentiment, we're going to go ahead and pop some foam squares on the one side and then a little bit of liquid glue on the other. And this is then just going to help support the section that's not going to be held up by the frame itself. And then just to hold down that other side, like I said, just some liquid glue. And I'm then going to have the sentiment. It's just going to be hanging off the side a little bit, but you can see down in that bottom right hand side, we've got a little bit of gap there. So I thought that was the perfect space just to leave for this sentiment. And the sentiment I used is You're Fabulous. So this could be used for a number of different occasions. It's nice when you can kind of leave cards open-ended a little bit like this, but again, there are some really great sentiments in this die set. And like I said, some of them do have the coordinating dies with them. So the only extra thing that I did on my card, I did this off camera, is I used some Nuvo crystal drops. I used some Morning Dew, which are the clear ones, and then the metallic Auburn pearl. And that just added a little bit of a finishing touch to this card. And then that is this card finished. And I paired it then with a coral coloured envelope that I did make myself. And I really love how this has come together. It's something really simple. It's got lots of little elements that I think work really well together. Nothing overwhelms anything else. And I think this is a great little stamp set from this Simply Cards and Papercraft issue. So you can see the finished card here, and again works really well with that coral colour envelope. So that's it for today's video. If you have enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any other videos. So thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.